Uh, we're all set up. So,
Like D&D.
uh,
It's
welcome
like a
to
normal
our.
session.
Say again.
It's like a normal session. We get
Right,
start time. That's whenever we get there.
right. So, welcome to our first deep dive discussion for Toa, Tomb of Annihilation. This is the first in a series that I'm hoping on hosting of deep dive discussions in regards to the Tomb of Annihilation adventure module published by Wizards of the Coast back in what, 2016, 2017?
2017.
2017. So at this point, we've had a lot of DMs who have run the entire adventure all the way through, in some cases multiple times. Uh, and so as a moderator of the subreddit and as a kind of keeper of the Discord, I wanted to expand the kind of interaction that we have with our community and give people more of a chance to really dig in on what the adventure is able to give us and how can we augment what the book has in it with materials that have been created in the years since the adventure came out. So there are some official modules like Ruins of Mezro. This is like Lost City of.
So
Anyway,
there's
oh,
Lost
you
City and
have
Mezro on Adventurers League. There are, and then there's Lost City and Mezro picks up from like kind of concurrent with the campaign and a little bit after, and then there's a bunch of Adventurers League modules that actually go from I think 12 to 20 that focus a lot on the whole Dendar thing in Chult.
okay.
I think those are the official ones, right?
Yeah, and then there's like the Risen Mists that explores Mezro as like a demi-plane.
Yeah.
Um,
Sweet.
And then
Yeah,
third party stuff we'll maybe touch on later.
we can. Yeah. So the purpose of these discussions is what do DMs need to know about discussion topic? And the topic today is the lore of Chult. So all of the stuff about Ubtao, the god, and his chosen, the Bare, and also what the hell is Artus Cimber doing with the Ring of Winter? How does the Ring of Winter tie in? And we also have the Dendar the Night Serpent and the Yuan-ti cult and Ras Nsi and all of the undead things that are going on and why do dinosaurs exist and stuff like that, right? So we're going to deep dive into all of these topics. I'm here as a moderator. I do not consider myself to be fully an expert of the lore of Chult. That's why we have guests. So if y'all want to introduce yourselves briefly, keep it to like about a minute. We'll start with Fish.
yeah. Hi, I'm Fish. My pronouns are she, they. I ran Tomb of Annihilation for my party over at Dyson Dynamics. A few of my players are actually here. Hi. And my specialty, my focus was, I would say, on Ras Nsi and Omu.
Excellent. Garmesh.
Yeah. So ran the campaign twice through. One time entirely in fifth edition. And then the second campaign was fifth edition, and then we actually converted to a different system in the tomb. So kind of interesting things there, but maybe not relevant to most groups on the conversion. And then I think the things that I kind of focused on were mentally working through how Ubtao works and how to kind of integrate some of the older lore in a way that made sense to me, which diverges a lot, I think, from canon. And then also kind of looking at like what other things can you add in, and that might be third party, it might be your own twists on the lore that helps kind of figure things out. And I'm also one of the most vocal they did Ras Nsi dirty groups on the server, I think, because I think there's some very very small but very interesting bits of lore about him that I don't know if the module actually does a great job of showing just what a wonderful character that can be.
Thank you.
And Micah, where are you coming here from?
I'm Micah. My pronouns are he, him. I am anything but an expert. I have very little mastery over a lot of the material that it's been published separately from Tomb of Annihilation. I actually kind of came back into Dungeons and Dragons about 7 years ago after about a 20-year hiatus. So a lot of all the Forgotten Realms stuff I kind of was playing catch up to learn about. And so the lore I've picked up has been either online or through various PDFs. And I kind of press Command F and search through them to find the lore that I need to get the game running. And so I've been doing that for years, running Tomb of Annihilation. I'm still not even done with my first one because I play with a family group, and we've been playing it for, I think, 4 years now. But I have this massive pile of data that I started loading up onto a website. So I will sit here and mostly learn probably. But I've got a bunch of notes laying around that I've written in spreadsheets and stuff. So I'm happy to participate, put out my 2 cents.
And we invited you in here because you have a blog. You've written a whole bunch. Yeah, you've written a whole bunch about Toa.
Yeah, it's weird.
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, I've written this blog, but really the blog's purpose is just to get, the subtitle on the server or on that blog is from my documents folder to you, and it's because my documents folder got so big with notes that it made my computer not work. So I literally had to do something with that information, and my first thought was to load it up on my server, but then that seemed pretty useless. And then I thought, well, I could throw it up on a Google Drive and people could just use my notes then. But then when I started looking at them, I was like, none of these make sense to anybody but me, because I've got like 20 different topics on a single spreadsheet spread out. I was like, I'm going to have to like make this make sense in some way. So I was like, well, maybe I'll just convert it into blog form. And so I built a Weebly thing and started putting it up there. I didn't realize until relatively recently that anyone really went to the blog. I didn't have any analytics on it, so I didn't know that there was I just found out the other day there's 20,000 people that use the blog. And I'm like,
wow.
So
yeah,
maybe if you're going to do something, maybe pay for the pro version so you can see what's happening on it. So I've just been posting this stuff in the dark. But a lot of my stuff is made up. A lot of my lore is made up. I think if anyone's going to try to run the campaign, I think this is probably true for any campaign that's set in the Forgotten Realms. Don't worry about it. My advice would be pick the parts of the lore that you think are neat and you want to emphasize and dig into those as much as you want. But there's I don't know, hundreds of novels and all these, published compendiums and all this stuff, the history of the Forgotten Realms, all this stuff that you can get into. And, if you get too far in the weeds, then you don't prep for your next game. So.
Right. Okay. So
yeah.
First,
I'll do my best. I'll try to keep up.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah. Also, you're not connected in Discord anymore, so people are moving over to my Twitch, which is fine. But just somehow you disconnected. So our first major topic is what do DMs need to know to run Toa as written? So this is very narrow. What do DMs need to know about the lore of Chult? And I do want to caveat this as well. In order to understand what's going on with the as written stuff that we're given as story beats. Okay, go.
I'm going to cut in first, and I guess just start off with when Chult is ancient. And I think when I started running Tomb of Annihilation, I had a hard time struggling exactly with how, when I say ancient, Chult is old. Its history dates back to the War of Dawn. We're talking the primordial creation myth thing. So the first thing is it's ancient. It's populated by monsters, and that fight against monsters for control of the land has been there the whole time. Other relevant information I would say is that the history that you need to focus on maybe goes back 100 years. That's when Acererak took Omu. That's when the spell plague, when Mezro fully divorced from Chult. And then Grim might have more insight on this. I don't remember when Amn conquered, colonized Chult, but 9 years ago is when Port Nyanzaru became independent and the merchant princes took power. If Grimm has any
Yeah.
more insight.
I'll just kind of like say I think there's definitely kind of like three big eras of history that if you care, right? Like so the first thing, if you care about this at all, I will say that what do you actually need to know to run the campaign? Nothing that's outside of the book. You could pick the book up and just run it and it will work. I don't know if that's the best way, but you could do it, I think. But yeah, so the three eras, and I'm going to reiterate a bunch of stuff you said, Fish, but like there's the Primordial War, who is Ubtao, or the Dawn War, which is the primordials against the gods, and who is Ubtao, where does he come from? That's really important if you want to dig into Ubtao. I'm going to keep saying his name two different ways this whole time. And like, who is Ubtao? Who's Dendar? We'll probably talk about that later. And what is that dynamic? And, you know, why can't the other gods interact on behalf of the death curse here? It's because of what happened in the Dawn War and some of the agreements there. So that's the ancient history, right? And then you kind of have the interim, which I'll call like when Ubteo's awake, which is the period of time where Ubteo is an active entity, and that stretches most of known history. And then at some point, depending on edition changes, spell plagues, whatever, Ubteo disappears. Nobody knows where he is, right? And that brings us to like Amn comes in, I think that's when Amn comes in and takes over. They're a foreign country that's across the sea. They basically get a colonial thing going. And then we get to the modern era, which is, you know, the Chultans throw off Amn and then create their own political structure. And then we get into new colonialism, which is the Flaming Fist from Baldur's Gate. The only other thing I would point out is there are three ancient civilizations in Tomb of Annihilation that as close as 100 years ago, or maybe even 50 years ago, actually still existed. And that's Mezro, Mbala, and Omu. The Amuans, yeah, it's all, those are the three. And so
Yes.
there are these runes of those fairly large civilizations that your players are going to encounter. You have a lot of freedom because there's not a lot written about them that I know of.
We get one
Sorry,
paragraph for Mezro in the book.
I was going to say this earlier. I'm not an expert. I just have a lot of opinions.
Sure.
And I read, I think, as much as I know, as I could about a lot of this stuff. So those are kind of the three eras of history. And the other thing that I kind of put in my notes here is like, what you need to know about the history is kind of what are the themes of your campaign going to be? Do you want to run this as a pulp, you know, jungle crawl and Indiana Jones type thing? Are you really interested in the colonialism aspect? Because that can get real interesting between all of these like Ras Nsi, the Flaming Fist, the Omnians, other entities in the Lord's Alliance if you want to, and Port Nyanzaru. Tons of political factions you could play with if you want to focus on that in your game.
The pirates
so
and the like all of the mines all the way through the whole area.
And there's somebody who's not with us tonight, just not here, but like Chult also connects to a whole nother like lizard empire, I think.
Oh, yeah.
On the south side of the map.
Yeah,
So like
the Hisari this is a bit of a deep
rock
hole,
and all.
but in some of the books featuring Jarlaxle, a throwaway comment is made asking him if he's from a Chultan city, implying that there is like a whole either a subterranean thing going on or
with
an
Underdark,
above
right?
ground drow city in Chult. So
Yeah. There's fire newts, there's all sorts of crazy stuff living out there. So, you know, it's but so the answer is like, how deep do you want to go? How much do you want to dig into each piece of history? And I think when you start prepping your campaign, a good question to ask yourself is how much of that work do you want to do? How much do you want to dive into the old sources? Because that'll inform a lot of your, like, how much you care.
Great point. I would say I think I agree almost entirely with what both of you said. I would say even more generically, in terms of lore for this game, I think the thing that makes this game unique and different than other adventures that I've seen is there's a kind of a first principle of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's that you are adventurers in what kind of feels like an ancient world, and whichever game you play, you find that it is built on the bones of another more ancient world. So whatever world you play in, that always comes up over and over again. It's like, oh, underground there was a great dwarven kingdom or whatever, that is long forgotten. Chult is like underneath that world for the Forgotten Realms. So you have like a lot of people have played in the Forgotten Realms all over the Sword Coast, and everywhere they go, they find like, oh, there was a civilization here long before anyone decided to roll 20 sided die, and if they've explored that and they start to feel tired of it, they can always wander off to Chult. And it's like, oh, but there was like literally a primordial set of gods that was doing stuff here too, and there were people that were reptilian people that had conquered the whole world a long, long time ago. And so it points towards that in an interesting way that I think is kind of fun, and gives you another kind of like level to work on with that, almost an archaeological level. I think the other part of it that I don't know if I call it lore, but I feel like the purpose of Tomb of Annihilation in large part, I think it has two main purposes that the publishers had, which was an homage to Tomb of Horror.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it's an homage to a lot of the weird old content that was coming out in first edition. Things like stuff from the Monster Manual and the Fiend Folio are all over the place in it. And so there's like a weird sort of like tribute going on in the whole thing to goofy animals like almirages and stuff like that. So you, just like you said, you can dig into that as deep as you want, and you can start playing around with that and use it. There's the downside is that since Chult is like this kind of pseudo African, Latino, Hispanic,
It's
Asian,
kind of like Mediterranean, like mishmash. Yeah.
like this hodgepodge of weird, very problematic stereotypes. If you get into the old content very quickly, you run into like hugely tricky things to try to run in your game. But there's the content, as far as playable content for Chult, goes back to second edition. So there's a ton of old stuff you can like go and read, but very quickly you get into being like, well, in order to run any of this stuff or use it, there's a lot of slavery going on, for example, that you have to kind of like deal with, which, enter at your own risk. And there's still a lot of that left over in the current book. I think that's one of the things that makes Tomb of Annihilation tricky, is that there's a lot of like, they kind of scrubbed out a lot of the slavery stuff, but it's still kind of there. It's like, well, once you get to, Omu, there's a fair amount of talk about slaves in there. And so you got to be careful with it. You got to, I mean, if your table is sensitive about it, or, I mean, it's tricky to play with, a culturally mixed table and have like little plastic slaves that you could maybe go and enslave yourself, and it can be very tricky. It's not like we're playing in 1985 again, and it's only like a monolithic culture of little skinny white boys in basements. We play a different game now, so you can get into that stuff, but I would always look at it and really think about like, is this still workable? What parts of it are attractive or whatever when you're moving forward with this stuff? So
I think it's really the random tables, if I'm remembering correctly. There's a bunch of random encounter tables.
Chultan cannibals.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I
It's
just took that off the table.
Yeah.
yeah,
I just plucked it out and was like, bye. Touch
when
that.
this is and I'm sorry, Apollo, and I promise I'll try and steer us back to the like what you need to know as a DM
Sure.
lore thing. I found running Tomb of Annihilation, was like a bit of a love letter to one of my players who's Afro-Latina, and it like reading through the book and like having the table discussions on like what topics are we cool with approaching. And it was very interesting, like going through and gutting so much of the book and being like, well, here's this random encounter, Chultan cannibals. They have like four intelligence, making them animals. That's weird, right? What is going on here? It's um it's hard. it's a really interesting book because they take so much from like Ethiopian culture, but don't know that they're doing that.
Right.
Right.
Right. There's
Yeah,
some like
Ras Nsi.
Amazonian stuff and like Ethiopia. Yeah, it's all.
His name is a
And, like-
title. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's also
Oh, I'll say there's one
There's-
more thing. I think that's an important, the actual piece of lore that if you could just know one thing, if I had to wish one thing on a new DM opening of the book, is knowing in advance that there are two groups of beings called Tabaxi that are totally different in it.
mm,
If you just know that will
Yes.
save you a lot of trouble. Because
Interesting.
it's very-
The
you're like,
cultural group and the cat people.
yeah, they're not
Oh, what?
related.
wait, they're
just
different.
Yes.
They're totally
yes,
different.
they're
What is going on?
totally-
What? Break that apart.
My fix for that is I just kept the Tabaxi cat people as Tabaxi, and then the cultural Tabaxi group. My best friend is a linguist, so there was a lot of language stuff that goes on in the game. So we were just like, okay, these are the Cholits, which are different from Choltans because Tabaxi are also culturally different from Choltans.
Yeah,
If
Huh.
it works,
There's
it
actually-
works,
actually-
right?
there's actually, I think, canon information on why this is. I don't remember where I read it. It's been a couple years, but the story goes that the Tabaxi migrated, like, I think when Oteo was still around, and they were like early protectors of the humanoids that were there. And so that faction named themselves Tabaxi because they were being led by cat people, and then those people either died or left. I forget what the deal was, but there is something that's like OG, maybe third edition era, something. I remember reading a thing where like, oh, well, that's somebody, and it was even back then it was clear somebody was band-aiding the problem. They were like, these are two different things, and somebody wrote a module for Dungeon Magazine or something and like screwed it all up. So there's like this weird fix, but it goes, the fix goes far back. So there's a canonized legend of some sort that the Tabaxi interacted with human Tabaxi, where they got the name from.
James Lauder, who wrote Ring of Winter and is kind of a guy who like spearheaded, helmed a lot of Chult. I know I think it's Heart of Jungle, it's a 2E thing. You can see him kind of clearly trying to like not homogenize, but a lot of the module is like him trying to explain away the like Tabaxi thing, the more distasteful parts of the lore.
Wasn't there a RADA done on the books at some point? Like they had the cultural sensitivity consultant go and fix some things with Toa.
Oh, I did not ever see that.
I feel like there was.
There was an errata. If I don't actually remember it, I do remember tearing into it though with my friends.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I really wish that they would have like. The book came out awfully late for them to not have a sensitivity advisor to come in and say, "Look," I mean, the typical moment that I see is like page 12. It's like, "Hey, Dungeon Master, these tribes, they use funny clicks when they talk."
Oh yeah.
You're like, I'm like, do not use that at your table. Don't sit around like impersonate Bantu people. It's immediately going to become really weird and like not a good move.
That's an important point though. Like speaking of doing voices and accents and stuff, like if you want to, like I had to have the talk with my party where I'm like, I'm going to be playing some people that are native to this land as NPCs, and I'm your DM, and I am very much culturally not what these people are in my own experience. And I am going to try to represent them with the best amount of respect that I can. And sometimes I will try a voice, and sometimes I just won't. Because sometimes a lot of the time voices are just fun. and trying out different accents from different parts of the world are fun, but sometimes they're problematic. And I had to go through and talk with my players and say, hey, if I am doing a voice and you think that it's not okay, like I will stop it. Like, let me know. I've never had an issue past having that discussion.
I have a general rule of thumb. I tell my players ahead of time because I've run various campaigns that are set in different things that are lifting from real cultures, right? And so my personal rule of thumb is if somebody heard me doing this out of context, what would happen?
Sure.
And so that
Yes.
usually becomes me telling my players like, hey, for Chultans, if you want to imagine that they are speaking in a certain way, that's fine. I'm going to use voices that don't have any cultural connotation to the way these people tied to the way they look. Just because,
Right.
like, you can look at me. I
Yeah.
have a certain, you know, I am who I am. I don't want to step on other people's cultures intentionally or accidentally. And that's, you know, yeah.
I to tag onto that, I think I do the same thing. And for me, using voices, I don't use it in all characters, but the use of a voice for me is usually to communicate something about their personality, not about their culture. So I've got my characters killed off all the guides eventually, so they had to go back to Port Nyanzaru and find somebody else to help them guide, and they ended up going to the mob, basically. They went to one of the ziggurats, and they found this guy named Tanake Bag of Peanuts, and they love him. It's their favorite NPC, and he talks like he's from Jersey Shore, because he's like part of the sanitation department, and he's like this like mobster, low level mobster enforcer guy that's along with them, and he's kind of dumb and mostly helpful, and they love him. And there's nothing about his culture that the Port Nyanzaru culture that plays through, other than he's part of like an organized crime thing. So I mean, that dance is close to poking at Italians and stuff, but it's more of a safe stereotype to play with because he's playing that kind of like lovable, low-level gangster character.
I do
But
want
some of
to.
my characters are like, I've got, they have like, the Tabaxi guides with them too, and they both talk like, the cat from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where it's like meow 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 meow, and that's.
I do want to. I would bring the focus back to Toa lore.
Lore. Let's get back to the lore.
Grimace,
So
do you have a point?
I've got two things on
Okay.
much less sensitive topics.
Sure.
The first one is I just point out now, in case we never come back to it, there are some explicit links to some other 5th edition published adventures. If your parties have played any of those, right? So the Ring of Winter ties in, I think, somebody correct me if I get this wrong, and I might be missing some, but Artus Cimber kind of ties into both Rime of the Frost Maiden and Storm King's Thunder, because there are events and characters in those that might show up depending on how you want to do it. And if you are interested in Oral and the Ring of Winter, I think there's very interesting ways to play with that. And then the Flaming Fist, the leader of the Flaming Fist in Chult, canonically will survive this campaign and go back to Baldur's Gate before the events of Descent into Avernus. Am I
Go
getting
on.
that right?
Sorry.
Last one that I know of is the Black Obelisks.
Mm-hmm.
They show up a bunch in 5th edition
It's just a meme.
And at this point, like, I thought something was going to happen, and it hasn't. And then the only other thing I would say is learning about Acererak, because he's kind of an absentee landlord in the module. But boy, if you decide to use him first or dig into him more, he can be fun. And also the Hags. If you know nothing about Tomb of Annihilation and you start reading the book, go to chapter 5 or 6, read about the Hags, then come back and keep reading the rest of the book, because you need to foreshadow them. And that's maybe the worst thing in the book that it doesn't tell you to do. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I agree with both of those points. I think introducing Acererak early and the Hags early is really, really smart. I think the book has a problem in not doing that. I had my characters met Volo in the bar at Thundering Lizard, And he just talked openly about Acererak, like, oh yeah, you might run into even liches down here. There's this one, and they're like, what's a lich? And like, oh, well, there's this guy that's, the most, probably the second most famous one. He just makes these madcap dungeons out there that, people can wander into, and they're designed to kill him. And they know that that's like the trope. And he's kind of like Skeletor, and he's kind of nuts. Even other liches don't like him. He's just kind of a jerk and crazy and does this. And you can do that and introduce that, because there's really there's no mention in the text of Acererak really at all until you get to the very end. So they don't build up your main villain really at all in it. The Hags, like you said, are the other main villain, and I knew nothing about the Hags before I started running the game. I was like, oh, I just thought they were witches or something. It's like, oh, there's like a whole thing tied in with the 9 hells and blah, 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 blah that you can get into, and like how they deal with their soul bag, collecting souls and how that works. All of that can be way more interesting, and you start introducing them early. I had stuff where it was like, I think it's interesting that you got Nanny Boo Boo out in there. So, and people would know about hags. There are sea hags that you can run into. So the people of Chult would know about them and have either superstitions or children's fairy tales that they tell about it. So regular people can tell your players that hags exist and they are out there. And if you go out in the jungles, yes, dinosaurs are scary and zombies are scary, but you got to watch out, because if you cross a witch, they'll get you. And start building that up as early as you can once they get there, so that it makes sense that all of a sudden, because otherwise they won't know about it until they get, to the bottom of the tomb.
So we've been talking for like 20 minutes about lore, which is
we've got 2 hours.
Great. Well, but just what you need to know to start, right? And so this popped into my head is that, so how do you get your players to know this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's nerds.
Important.
We're DMs. We're the nerdiest of the nerds, right? And so the way that the adventure, I believe, is supposed to start is the players get teleported to Port Nyanzaru. And there's 2 interesting variants on that that a lot of people have talked about in the server and on Reddit. And one or both of these, one is running Cellar of Death, which you can get on DM's Guild. It's a very interesting way to give the players a tie in and start exposing some of this lore and like getting some lich stuff going.
And the Harpers.
And then the other really interesting thing is, instead of teleporting to Chult, put your players on a boat with a bunch of NPCs that are going back to Port Nyanzaru for whatever reason, and then you can have little vignettes where you can introduce maybe a couple of guides, introduce a merchant prince or 2, and then also start giving the lore you want your players to know about Chult in a more interactive way. I think the way, just as an example, the way we did it, I had like 4 days on the boat. We had Volo, we had the merchant prince of magic items, Wakanga, and we had a couple of other, because Wakanga was visiting Sindara and he was coming back, right? And so and then I also had like 3 or 4 of the guides. I had Shago, everybody's favorite, the dwarf. Oh,
Shago's great.
But so this was a way to have these little vignettes to just like drip feed things and be like, oh, here's what happened with here's like why this city exists the way it does now. If you go in the jungle, look out for Ras Nsi. Like all sorts of little bits of things like that to just sprinkle it out, as opposed to welcome to Port Nyanzaru, have fun.
I definitely recommend, when I ran TUA, my party first started out as all like expats. They're all from the Lord's Alliance, the Sword Coast, and I played Chult as like a very friendly and forward place. A little bit of like, NPCs kind of condescending them, still helping them out, but like, you're new here. I'm going to explain some basic stuff to you because you're fucking stupid and tourists. These are zombies, which is like also a fun delivery of like, oh, right, this is a different place. Politics are different. There's layers.
Yes. Yeah. By the way, we will have a whole deep dive on just the guides. So all of the guides will have their own deep dive. That will happen later. But anyway,
you had talked about it tying into the other adventures and how that stuff canonically works, and I ran into that early on, and I had not run those other games and did not know them. I was like, who is Artus Cimber? Why is this person taking up so much space in the book? So then I looked him up. And it's like, oh, he's in a novel. Oh, he's kind of like Indiana Jones, but like for like this little pulp novel. And since my players didn't know that stuff and didn't go on those things, I basically just deleted it out of my campaign. They just didn't run into giants and stuff. So I was like, I've already got so much stuff to deal with trying to sort this thing out, and it doesn't really fit in like what I'm trying to do here. And I just, unless they really kind of like went straight towards where something like that would be found, I wasn't going to like lead them there. And so that part was kind of out for me because they didn't have the background of coming from a previous adventure where they would be excited to see, oh, these are the giants from the last adventure in here. But if you did come from that, sure, I would totally use that stuff. So I think this is true for running any adventure, is you're going to have to look at it and decide what parts make sense for your group and what fits in it, and flesh that part out a lot more, and then probably ignore parts that don't really fit with your stuff as well, or doesn't emphasize the themes you care about. And that's just general DMing advice. The book is humongous. There's so much content in that adventure that you can choose from. And they did that on purpose. They designed it so that there's a lot of, all paths lead to Omu. There's a lot of different things to see and do. If you really, really want them to go see some place, you can like put it right in their path and move it there. No one's going to come and like take away your, player's handbook or whatever because you moved the fire finger over 3 hexes so that they did walk into it. Do whatever you want. It's your game,
I moved a ton of stuff. My map doesn't look anything like the book. I had one other note here in our what do you need to know right from the get-go. And I think it's the death curse. And I think there sometimes, I don't know, in the Discord, sometimes you get slightly contentious discussions because the death curse is a ticking clock, right? And it can literally kill NPCs if you play it straight. It can kill what most people think is the main villain of the campaign. Like you could have him just die off screen. Which may be interesting. There's probably interesting ways to do
that
it.
being Ras.
But Ras
Nsi, yep.
Yeah.
Unless you make Syndra a bad guy, which could be fun.
Yeah, but so I guess the key thing I'm trying to get there is
Ras and Valindra and Syndra.
Yeah. Because like the death curse, it's either going to be this omnipresent, oppressive force driving your players forward. One of my groups really felt that. I didn't even do anything. They were just like, this thing is happening. But if you're not making the death curse obvious to your players, or you don't want it to start, that can kind of change entirely the tone of your campaign. I think I've said on the Discord probably dozens of times also. I've said there's a great Chult campaign and it's not Tomb of Annihilation.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is if you just take the book at its face, it's 3 acts. They're each very focused and they're designed to help you propel the party along the critical paths to get to the tomb, solve the death curse. And so there might be a point where you want to ask yourself, is that really what I want my campaign to be? Because a lot of people get really interested in other facets of this campaign. And so that's where, kind of for the sake of verisimilitude, you might want to hold off on making the death curse part of everything until you're really ready for that time to kick in. And then I think, Fish, you had said something that reminded me of other people have done this, which is, I think there's, at least in the DMs I know, the groups I've talked to, there's this big like adventurers coming to Chult. It's a bunch of folks from the Sword Coast showing up in Portney and Zaru, and we're gonna solve this, right? And it's like, well, that's cool. Or you could make your players all actually have characters from Chult who deeply tie into the background. And would just themselves know a lot of this. So you could maybe, for a lot of the lore, switch over to, oh, you remember that Like, you don't need a skill check. You don't need to do anything. You just remember this and give the players information as it's relevant. But again, that will maybe change the tone of a lot of things that are going to happen in the campaign based on the factions you're going to run into. So these are just considerations about like how deep do you want to go in molding the world and molding the tone of the campaign to what you want to run.
That's a good point. And then there's a lot of side quests from Port Nine Zaru that send you out into the jungle and then say, come back for your reward. So it's like you go out for like a week and a half and then you come back to the port and you're like, we just wasted 3 weeks.
None of my parties ever went back to Port Zaru.
Yeah, I don't think mine did either.
I had to engineer a way to get merchant princes to them in the jungle just to see if they wanted to bite on a whole bunch of plot threads with factions.
I had Eku turn into her Kawato form and fly back.
I did a summer. Don't do what I did. I'm still dealing with this. I gave them a magical item that was a helm of teleportation that allows them to basically move the group back to anywhere that they came before.
Oh, geez.
It ended up being pretty game breaking in some ways, but they've been back to Port Zaru a number of times. But that's because they can whomp right back there and they're there. And there's a lot of like supplements out there about like ways to set up teleportation things to get people back to Port Zaru. Yeah, just don't give them a hell of teleportation. They did.
Somebody, I'm trying to remember who it was. They used webways.
Yeah.
Just whole like ley line teleportation things going on.
Yeah, my party, I did teleportation with like certain gates. And I used the NPC Mojinari from Kirsibal to kind of control it, so they had to be nice to her. So, she would, I think they only used it like 3 times. But
now,
I do
the
have
Heart of Teo has a teleportation circle in it, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
The Temple of Ubteo? Yeah.
The Heart of Ubteo, the floating heart.
Where Valindra is.
Or Valindra puts a teleport. How did she build a teleportation circle there according to the rules as written? I have no idea, but she's got one there. Right? So in theory, if the party can take over the heart, they can also have a way, if they have a mage who can do this sort of stuff, or somebody who can. There are some ways in the actual campaign to get around hiking back, but yeah, alternate travel ideas.
Yeah, to use something more like the teleportation stones and stuff. Don't give them very much power to do that because it is somewhat game breaking.
It goes back to Thay. Her teleportation circle goes to Thay.
Oh, does it?
Yep.
The biggest problem I ran into with people having the capacity to teleport with a device is actually once they got to the tomb, then it felt really shitty that I felt like I had trapped them into like accidentally teleporting into an abattoir full of monsters unfairly because they thought that was a thing. So be aware that will feel that way, maybe, unless you kind of prep it or put charges on it or something. But
yeah.
Oh no. Okay. Sorry, I'm being like super well actually. She's got a teleportation circle, and you can memorize the runes at that circle to get back to it. So you would need to know the runes on a different circle to go to, and it specifically calls out that she doesn't leave the sigils to Thay anywhere that anybody could find them.
Yep.
Which is just interesting information.
Right. So we touched on a couple of things that will segue into other questions here, topics that we have written down. One of them was the existence of gods and why aren't they doing anything about the death curse? I think that's a really cool segue to get into. There's also, we've already touched on Artus Cimber, and where does he fit into the adventure? I want to briefly mention my experience with Artus. So I've had that whole B plot. I've ran the game where that B plot exists and is sort of mixed in with the plot, and the party meets Artus, and it's kind of a nothing burger. And they don't really chase it because they're like, oh, we have the world to save. You're cool and all, but like, we've got to do this thing. And then I have another campaign that I'm running where it's not really a factor at all. But I do like the visual of having frost giants appear in the jungle and the party being very confused. That has happened. So the Ring of Winter has an ability where it makes a frost zone, right? It makes a big bubble of snow area. I had one of those exist, and the Frost Giants had found one and set up camp in it. And then the party found that, and they're like, "Why the heck does this exist?" So that sort of alluded to the Ring of Winter existing. The Frost Giants were like, "Where the heck is this guy? We're looking for this item," And it
Do we just want to get some artist thoughts out now, since we're already talking about them?
sure.
Fish,
Yes.
you talk for a bit. The rest of us have talked about stuff for a bit.
Yay!
I have some stuff to say about artists, but let's hear yours first, please.
So, just to start off with, I feel like it's a very popular idea to not engage with artists, or that people like really struggle with artists as a character in the book because he has the potential to, and this is so evil of me to say, be more interesting than the player characters.
He becomes the A plot.
Right, he becomes the A plot. There's just so much about him that, and the thing with TOA is that unlike a lot of other adventures, TOA as written does not have a lot of NPC engagement. It is like for months on end, it is just your party talking with each other. So then you get Artus, who is an adventurer on their level. This is a guy who like has been a part of stuff. He has an arch nemesis. He has sidekicks, and narratively, artists should parallel your party. He should parallel like party members who are foreigners. This is a guy from Cormier who loves Chult, loves Mezro, wants nothing but the best for it, wants the death curse to be over. Like, he's a good guy. And I just like him. Okay, he has dead wombat names tattooed on. That is a really crazy detail for an adventurer. So, the big thing is that I think artists lends a lot to humanizing and kind of answering the question of the module, which is like, why do you care? Why do we care about ending the death curse? And a little bit like, what happens if we fail? Well, what happens if you fail is Artus Cimber sweeps in and makes his own attempt. Lore-wise, just getting straight into the lore, Artus Cimber was featured in Ring of Winter, James Lauder, published back in 1998, I think. And he was he's an adventurer from Cormier. His father was a like brigand and thief who saved the Cormieran king. He has like a Gandalf type acquaintance in Ring of Winter who when he dies in Ring of Winter, his spirit comes in and like talks to him.
It's from the 80s. I think we can spoil the book.
You can spoil Ring.
Yeah. Well, so well, obviously the Gandalf elderly acquaintance,
92.
mentor, father stand-in dies. But he has a strong tie to Mezro. He did complete the Ubau maze and become one of the Beret. He has Ring of Winter, which is the artifact of Arwell that is I think in canon it isn't like it's either an aspect of Arwell that possesses it, whatever.
I think it's one of the ways she chooses her chosen.
Yeah,
which
I think
Artus was for a little while one of the chosen of Oral.
This is like a crazy what?
Yeah, he's such a fun guy because he's like when you talk about artists, this is how you talk about your player characters. Yeah, so my player character, he's the son of this big thief, and his dad was grooming him to take over the business. But I said, no, I want to study magic.
So
Like,
this is where I have very different opinions on artists. And so I did read Ring of Winter while preparing for the campaign because I wanted to know more about this dude, right? Um, I would say he's not a bad guy, but I also don't think he's that good of a guy. I think his superpower is he's the most stubborn human being in existence because he passed the test to become a paladin or Bara of Ubteo, rejected it. Uh, I would say he doesn't love Mezro or Chult. He loves his wife. Um, I think he's like the number one wife guy ever. Um, and so I think there's a lot of different ways you can play him. Right? So this is like my take on him, right? Is that he's this very kind of he wants to find his wife. Maybe we should say exactly what he's running when you get to him in the book. He has the Ring of Winter, as written. He has the Ring of Winter, and he's been running around Chult since. This is tough to do. Okay, I'm gonna try and do like the 2-minute history of this guy. Sorry, guys.
That's what we're here for.
Spoilers for Ring of Winter. So Artus goes to. He's a harper. He goes to Chult. I can't remember where along in the book, but he rejects the harpers and basically says, "Screw you guys. You don't actually care about anything," or something like that. And so he goes to Chult. His buddy dies. He's running around, and eventually he gets into Mezro, which he shouldn't even be able to do, but he gets into Mezro, which is the city of Ubteo. And he has this kind of meet cute with one of the Bara, who is what's her name?
Alessandra.
Alessandra Ray Burton. And there's a hilarious sequence where like they hit it off in their meet cute, and then she's like literally, well, I'm immortal and I've tried dating immortal guys. I don't want to date you. You're mortal. That never ends well. And he's like, well, damn. Okay. And then some stuff happens, and he eventually I believe the reason he actually takes the test to become a Bara, somebody's going to correct me on this in the comments when this gets posted. He's trying to get the Ring of Winter, right? Because he can use it to defend Mezro from goblins and something else.
The Batiri who are working with his arch nemesis.
Yeah, the arch nemesis guy who dies in that book, by the way. He dies in that book. Sorry,
it's
spoilers.
Great.
Wait, so he's trying to get the Ring of Winter to become immortal so he can date Alessandra, who's also immortal?
Basically.
No?
But yes.
No, but yes.
Huh.
It's a pleasant side effect.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So the book ends. He helps save Mezro, who Ras Nsi helps him save Mezro. This will be important when we come back to Ras Nsi, because I think Ras Nsi is not a bad guy. Ras Nsi never did anything wrong.
Thank you.
And I will explain why when we get there. So Artus and Miss Ray Burton, I'm just going to go with that because I cannot say Alessandra, whatever. Miss Ray Burton.
Yeah.
They go off adventuring together happily ever after. Yay! Fast forward some amount of time because addition changes happened and somebody threw the spell plague into D&D. And for some reason, all of the Bara of Mezro decide to teleport Mezro to a different plane of existence. I also have opinions about this, but we'll come back to those later. And so his wife's gone. Mezro's gone. Artus was not with them when this happened. And so now Artus has been basically running around the jungle of Chult looking for what happened to Mezro for 100 years. I kind of have a whole thing where, like, if you want to really get Artus in here and your characters are curious about the timelines of this dude, this is some stuff you'll want to think about and be like, do I want to follow? Oh, in that 100 years, he also became and then stopped being the Chosen of Oral, which is kind of wild. He's also had the Ring of Winter the entire time, which one of the main features of the Ring of Winter is to slowly drive you into its service to go serve Oral. It just doesn't work on him. It just doesn't work. Like, most stubborn dude ever. So you kind of, go.
I'm sorry. I want to intervene on the Ring of Winter. The big thing is that his Delmar Ray Burton had the Ring of Winter, if I remember, at one point.
His wife's dad,
And what?
right? It's his wife's. That's his wife's dad, right?
Yes.
Delmar is his
And
wife's dad, who's also a paladin or Bara of Ubteo. If
yes.
we're doing
And
lore,
well,
let's get it
that's
all out.
yeah. So, and this is Artus Cimber is looking kind of for Delmar Ray Burton. And so Delmar had the Ring of Winter, and out in like the Ten Towns region, the Frostfar region, and wanted to use it for, artifacts. And the thing about the Ring of Winter as like an evil artifact is that it isn't telling you to do evil things. It's very like monkey's paw situation where what I'm getting at is Delmar had the Ring of Winter, was like, I need to stop these guys, and ended up dropping a nuke. Just froze solid an entire town
Yeah.
and left. So what Artus
Wait,
Cimber, when he has the Ring of Winter, his stubbornness plays into this. He knows what he wants. His intentions are just like so. I think what he says as he goes through the book is like, you just can't use it for yourself. Once you start using it for yourself to make things easy, to live forever, it will latch on to that and do everything evil it can. And
It's a very One
that's why
Ring
it's,
coded.
yeah.
and that's
One thing I
why,
used that.
We need a ring to rule them all in our
Right.
camp.
So I used that in the campaign to have him never use the ring.
yeah,
Ah,
Like, because it's this insanely powerful. Actually, well, what I really did is I had the Frost Giants find him, cut his arm off that had the ring on it in an ambush, take it, and then we did an overland chase with his arm missing. And then one of my, I also made Zendala, his actual daughter. She got the
yes,
ring. The ring started driving her insane, and we had to solve all of that. But
That's fun.
finding a way, this is my solution to how do we make sure the ring doesn't get used because it can do so much. I'm
interesting.
done, sorry.
No, okay.
that, oh,
Oh, you got more.
one lore thing I am so sorry about Artus Cimber, and this is so, here's my thing about him being a wife guy. Yes, I agree he's a wife guy. He canonically, his weakness is beautiful women. He gets fucked over on the boat going to Chult, which like does lead to his mentor getting killed because there's a
Yeah.
beautiful woman. Alessandra's a beautiful woman. He was married back in like his way when, like, this
This
is
is
a point of
where Zendala came
contention
from. Sorry.
where like his mentor is like, well, you went on a like 2 year elopement with a woman who turned out to be a devotee to the like BDSM god. I'm really worried if we run into beautiful women there. And Artus is like, nothing will happen.
Wait, who's the BDSM god?
Well, the BDSM, everyone knows what I'm talking about. The BDSM god, the god of pain, Lilzazar or
Oh,
something.
okay.
Yeah,
Ilmater?
There's gotta be
What?
one.
yeah.
There's gotta be one.
I'm pretty sure it's Ilmater, but like,
Awesome. Okay.
Wait,
which
is
is
it?
just me
Wait.
going more to my point that one, Alessandra has been married before.
No, that's the
100%, they totally have an open marriage thing going on. Two, Artist canonically has
we have a
illegitimate children. Acererak Cimber in Storm King's Thunder is his son. You, I made, if someone's dad wasn't on screen in TOA, I had a moment where Artist is like, hey, how old are you? Don't worry about it.
it's
So
So,
I
Leviatar. Leviatar?
yes.
There we go.
Leviatar, okay,
The
yeah.
Lady of Pain. Maiden of Pain.
I
There we go.
will offload this whole concept, but if anybody watching this is ever curious about my whole Zendala as his daughter, I lay out a whole thing in a video I made on YouTube. If you look for me, Grimish Artisan Zendala. You can find a really long breakdown of how I pulled that all together. But it's an interesting idea because I think the module presents her as pretending to be his daughter. And I was playing with, well, what if we made it actually his daughter to up the stakes here a little bit and put some drama in besides just the wife thing? If it works, it works. If not,
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would so concerns about Artus, right? I guess I think we touched on it a little bit before we went off in this. Obviously, he's an interesting character and can be run a bunch of different ways. How do you make sure he doesn't overshadow the players? Is the real question. And I think you just want to think about that if your players really get into it, because both Artus, if you take the ring away from him and get the giants to have the ring, that becomes a whole side quest of its own. If you look at the runes of Mezro, Lost City of Mezro stuff, I think that can almost become the Artus Cimber show in a lot of ways. So if you're interested in it, I'd maybe recommend reading through it because there's a lot of great content in that book, but you're going to need Artus involved or you're going to need to replace Artus. And it's an interesting, maybe it doesn't matter for your group. Maybe they love Artus Cimber. I don't like having NPCs that take over.
Yeah, it's like having Shago that just like in combat completely overshadows the players for the first like 6 levels.
Or Iku. How do you pretend Iku's not what she is?
Right.
That's a different deep dive.
Yes, it is. It is. That's true. Okay, where are we? We are Death Curse and Gods and Ubtao and Ubtao's influence. How do we add more Ubtao to the land, even though he abandoned his people? How do we
crazy theory?
Just shoot? Yeah, go for it.
Fish, do you know my aspects of Ubtao theory?
I feel like I do, but
I'll try to give the short version of this. Okay, so Ubtao, primordial, made a deal with the gods during the Dawn War that he would betray all the other primordials, both in exchange for absolute rulership of Chult, nobody else can come in, and also when Dendar the Night Serpent wakes, he will take care of Dendar. So that's kind of like, that's how we get to the point where, why don't all the deities just come in here and be like, screw you, Ace, we're going to just get rid of this death curse thing. That's why. So I guess I'll stop there. I'll let us talk about real lore before I give you my, how do you square all these circles?
What's interesting there about the deal that Ubtao made with the other deities and the such is that in 1372 DR, and so this is contemporary with the downfall of Ras Nsi, you get, this is...
She brought a date.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in that shit. The downfall of Ras Nsi, I get to tie in my boy. 1372 DR is the downfall of Ras Nsi when he took the armies of undead and crushed the Ashawi. The Ashawi were a tribe who were fighting with Mezro, who were right, by the way. I am on the Ashawi side. They formed the Ashaudao, a shadow giant who did turn on the armies of Mezro, but then turned on the Ashawi. There's a lot of things going on there. Now, in 1372 DR, Shar, the goddess of shadows, absorbed some aspect of the Ashaudao, or in some theories or rumors or alternative tellings, the Ashawi just summoned Shar as a Ashaudao. What I'm getting at is, since 1372, the deal that Ubtao has with the gods is in legal battle. Technically, they violated it. Right. Yeah. A Shar got involved. So there's a really interesting question there in the air, which is the gods could intervene, are they still not intervening because they're kind of banking on Ubteo not knowing or being like, well, you know what? It was 2,000 years. You guys get one slip up. I'll let this pass.
So
But yeah.
I solved it a different way. Because yeah, I kind of ran into that in the deep lore, and there's also some other stuff if you poke around where the whole god thing doesn't make sense. And then if you look at Portney and Zaru, there's like temples to other gods there, which is problematic if Ubteo has full dominion, right? And so the way that
I assume those are recent though, right?
We've Gond. It's Gond and Sune and
there's a couple
Helm and Torm or something like that.
Yeah, but so I think, and I may be wrong, but somewhat canonically, Ubteo's been kind of absent for a couple hundred years, right? Like he's just kind of been gone. And I think so. One thing to throw in fish on top of that, when Ras Nsi wiped out, he wiped out the ship. I can't
Ashawi.
Ashawi. He wipes out the Ashawi, like genocides them, like full stop, wipes them off the face of Chult. And then the other Bara vote him out of the city of Mezro. But the interesting thing is Ras doesn't lose his powers, which means Ubteo doesn't have a problem with what he did because Ubteo can rescind your powers. So there's always 7 Bara, and you have to pass a test to become a Bara. And if you stop believing in him or he gets angry at you, he being Ubteo, you lose your powers. And that actually comes up in Ring of Winter. If you want to get into it, this book does actually get into that. And so the way I squared all of this is that, and this is not canon. I took the idea that what if way back in the day, Ubteo was lying about Dendar, and Dendar was just an aspect of Ubteo himself that he used to dupe the gods.
Ooh. See,
And
here's the go on.
So very quickly from there, Ubteo keeps fracturing off aspects of himself into the trickster gods, into Omu, into the dinos. Every time he needs a problem solved, he keeps dispersing himself. And so now the way I played it was he had dispersed himself so far that he was no longer really conscious, but still had been the only entity active there. And so what Ras Nsi, the last true believer in Ubteo, is doing is trying to do all the stuff in the book to summon Dendar, because he's figured out, or he's pretty sure, that either Dendar is part of Ubteo, or if he summons it, it will force Ubteo to reunify itself. And that will bring Ubteo back, which will bring Mezro back, which will get Ras Nsi maybe finally recognized by the other Bara and Ubteo that he was doing the right thing all along. Okay, that's my crazy aspects of Ubteo theory.
I think that's awesome. I love that. I'm gonna cite you and put that on my blog.
The interesting to kind of bring it back to the original question of bringing Ubteo's influence more into the adventure is, Grim touched on this a little bit, the tenuous relationship Ubteo has with like the identity or label as a god or as a deity. And it's just that like there is a incredibly beautiful write-up that my friend Victor showed me, who's in the chat years ago, that like Ubteo is like a omnipresent force. Like he is a singular entity. He is what we can see as a god, but he is, I think it's like a kind of a concept in Shintoism, but Ubteo is also the ground, the food you eat, the animals you hunt, the animals who hunt you, the zombies, you, me,
The live
like
stream from Final
the
Who's
Fantasy.
life
Awa
stream.
from Avatar.
Right. And that is something that I definitely encourage in DMs, is that like your players should definitely walk around that jungle like, yeah, there's something else going on here. Because Ubteo is a true neutral force. That's why he's okay with Ras Nsi. I mean, the thing about that too is that Ras Nsi, kind of bringing him back, sorry, is that he is one of the oldest NPCs that your party will ever encounter. The dude is older than bread. The dude is older than the written language. Like, this is a guy
He's older
who,
than the lady who runs Waterdeep.
right,
He's at
he's,
least 3,500 years old, if not more.
yeah,
Holy,
he is older than like the Sword Coast as a thing. So the Ashawi, not the first tribe he's wiped off the face of the earth. The thing is that the only thing Ubteo cares about two things. Mezro, he doesn't necessarily care about the people in Mezro. The people of Mezro is what the Bray are for. That's what they worry about. Mezro as a city, as a holy city, as a city dedicated to him, and dinosaurs.
yes. Just casually
Every
drop that. All of the dinosaurs.
everything else
They're Chult's full
is
dinosaurs, guys. All
Yep.
of them. They're all there.
Undead dinos.
So I would say, to the question of how you incorporate Ubteo into, and the Death Curse, you asked about that too, into your game without having to get super deep into this like deep lore. I think probably if you handle it pretty simply, I have like most of the citizens of Port Nyanzaru that live inside the wall, they have adopted these kind of colonialist gods that have been there, brought there by Amiens for a while. So they do Temple of God and stuff. But once you start getting even a little bit out, you start seeing that like the merchants that are kind of outside the wall and the people that are out in the, Tariki anchorage and stuff, they all like kind of have, yeah, they recognize these other gods, but they still have like a little maze amulet, or they mention Ubteo in little dinner prayers and things like that. And so that I keep that. I think even like right at the gates, he's still like kind of like recognizes like, yeah, no, we give fealty to this stuff now, and everybody thinks it's passe and a superstition, but we know that there's hags and we know that there's Ubteo in a way. We still do our bedtime prayers to him or whatever. So you can incorporate that way without knowing a lot about it. I mean, know that he is primordial, know that his stuff is mazes, and you'll be probably fine unless your players decide to dive into that stuff. And then what matters on that as far as like the lore for the game is like you've got this timer going on with Dendar the Night Serpent, right? So what happens if you fail the quest? Well, it doesn't really say, but one thing you had mentioned, I never even thought of this, that Artus Cimber would come in and save the day. I wouldn't do that in my game. I would make a catastrophe happen, but
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, I would. If they don't win, what would happen, in my opinion, a couple things could happen. One, Dendar the Night Serpent does get risen. They do summon Dendar the Night Serpent, and it rips the world apart. And then Ubteo has to show up, and they fight some sort of intergalactic battle or something. But like, you guys all die. Everybody in your team dies, and your next adventure is now dealing with that in wherever you go. You guys were murder hobos, so guess what? You all get to go to the Nine Hells and now deal with the hags as these worms and like work your way up through that system. Maybe, I don't know, but you'd have to come up with some solution for that. Or I could also see it. Not much happens. Early on, I had a very hard time hooking my players into the Death Curse as a problem because my best friend's a dick, and he was just trying to spoil the campaign. It was just like, so it sounds like a rich person problem. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's talking to one of my NPCs. He's like, I mean, so you're saying that people can't get resurrected? I mean, it's like, what?
No.
50,000 gold pieces? I'm never going to get resurrected. I'm first level, And so it's like, oh, huh. How do I argue? It's like, yeah. So okay, your friend Sindra Sylvain, the billionaire, she sent you out here to solve the problem for you that she's, eat the rich, he did that. And I was like, there are ways that, you get people hooked in on it. who knows what happens if they win? Does the Atropol become some sort of super god? And does that cause a big problem? The book's not super explicit about really what happens, because I think the book assumes you're going to win or something, or like when the game kind of ends when you die, like losing or something. I don't know. But you could play that a lot of ways. That could go a lot of different weird ways. But I don't know if you have to worry about it, because, if you think, 60 sessions ahead in your adventure, you're probably not being flexible enough. So you might have to make something up at the tail end for how do you solve this problem of, Acererak wins, or the Atropol becomes this thing. You can make something,
I made Ras Nsi a lot more active in the world. I did this thing where he had these pylons set up that were raising dead around them and directing them towards Port Nyanzaru. Because originally my follow-up was going to be basically Ras Nsi tries to reconquer Chult. We never did that. But what that let me do in Port Nyanzaru and such is have regular people, or even some of the merchant princes, explain who are all these undead with the blue triangle? Oh, those are minions of Ras Nsi. Who's Ras Nsi? Oh, he serves Ubteo. It's legends. And I also made I tried to play up the other cities as things that had recently collapsed. Like within a little bit behind recent living memory, these were all civilizations that were big deals, and they had all mysteriously collapsed. So it was a way to kind of funnel the players towards those things. And this is offhanded comments and stuff, but just make sure that you're bringing this up and kind of hitting your players with it, so that they'll ask the questions of you via your NPCs.
I did the same thing with Port Nyanzaru, and to an even further degree, my lore that I was playing with is that everybody in Chult always thought of Port Nyanzaru as the big sellout town. That was, since slavery was this thing throughout the story for the longest time, Port Nyanzaru has, ever since that time, really been an Amnian port where they just funneled Chultans out into the world to be slaves. And so everybody that's out on the economy is no, Port Nyanzaru is not a city that we like. That is colonial town where they steal us and they exploit all our goods and stuff. And then in the wake of the collapse, it turns out, hey, I guess we're the only legit city. But once you get outside of town, people remember and they know, and that they remember these old cities falling down. Mezro is not that long ago that it disappeared, So having all that stuff still, like you said, in the minds of your people, I think is a good way to go.
All right. I think we're solid. So Mezro, mentioning Mezro, right? And that the published supplementary material that is official, Ruins of Mezro, is intended to be a higher tier campaign from 11 to 20, right?
So there's kind of 3 buckets of content. And so you've got, the book that you can get on DM's Guild, Lost City of Mezro, has stuff that you can intersperse. You can start interspersing what I'm going to call kind of the Artus Cimber plot into there'll be little side quests that will happen. I think you have to meet Artus Cimber, and then he'll kind of almost literally show up and ask for help, or somebody will come to you and be like, hey, you knew Artus, right? And so it sets the seeds, but that plot kind of covers both before and after the events of TOA. The Adventurers League individual thingamajobbers, I don't do much at AAL, but those all take place after TOA. They're kind of intended to be what you do afterwards, and that really focuses on Dendar and a lot of that stuff and the Flame Peaks. And then there's the city itself, and I think it's really important to note that the Lost City of Mezro that you get the content for in the book, Lost City of Mezro, is not the Lost City of Mezro. It's the ruins left behind of the Lost City of Mezro, which are probably magically created facsimiles of what was originally there.
I think it's almost, I think it is textual that the beret like left the ruins there
Yeah.
so people wouldn't look. And that's one of the things Artist picks up on is that he's like, this shit is fake. This is not how I left my house.
So the city is a very condensed mini sandbox, right? It's got a flaming fist settlement in it that could be really cool. And then it's got, I think my only complaint about it is I think the content in there ranges from like levels 4 to 17, all within like walking distance. So one of my notes was you might want to be careful with this because there's a lady that can summon spheres of annihilation on the party if at level 3 if they wander in at the wrong point, and like that's gonna not end well. So I think there's just like a tuning question about how you maybe let the players engage with some of that if you just don't want to, kill them offhandedly. But so there's 3 buckets of content, is what I was trying to get at there, that kind of cover different things.
But as far as like the book itself goes, I mean, I think you guys said the point well. I mean, it feels like a glaring omission. It's interesting that like when we're talking about like what is this book, the book canonically says there's nothing there. I mean, it's supposed to be nothing there, and then like people were so annoyed by that, they're like, well, that doesn't fly. There has to be something there. And so then these books got published, and they're like, we're going to have this stuff. And so I think it makes sense to use exactly that content. I would definitely recommend somebody go, snooping around those ruins to find out, this lore. Otherwise you walk around, it's like, yep, it's just a big, you're in, the game Uncharted and walking around a bunch of like rocks, and there's nothing to see here. And like your characters will just go like, well, what about this rock? Like, there's nothing to see here. It's like, why is there a city here with nothing to see here in it? It's like, well, the book I'm running has like literally no information for you to do anything with in this section. So,
yep. Well, all it says is that the Flaming Fist patrols come here and they take stuff. It says the ruins have been thoroughly ransacked by the Flaming Fist in the name of Baldur's Gate, and Flaming Fist patrols still visit the site regularly, partly as training for new recruits, partly to make sure nothing was missed. Neither treasure nor clues remain for the player characters to find here. It's like, cool, there's nothing here but useless ruins. Right. Keep moving along. And it's like, really?
And it's supposed to be like the other really big important city besides Omu. It should be a thing where it's like, if you go and you talk to somebody in the, in Old City in Port Nizaru, and they're like, oh, well, you're trying to find the Forbidden City? Well, they could be talking about Mezro. Mm-hmm. There's a number of places that were old cities in the old days. I remember them as a kid. But that might be because that might still be there, or there might still be stuff there. They might not be in tune with it. And then you can go there. But to get out there and be like, yeah, no matter how many investigation checks you do or perception checks, there's just nothing here, guys. Sorry. You're going to have to keep on marching to Kirsten Ball.
They're going to have to get lore from elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, too, because one of the things about Mezro that we know from Ring of Winter, but also just the domain of Ubteo, is that he's a god that encourages knowledge, collection. The Lost of Mezro should be like the Forgotten Realm equivalent of the Library of Alexandria.
Exactly. 100%.
Like,
you're 100%. Yeah.
The Temple of Ubteo alone should be an awe-inspiring event for the players to see if you get there.
The note that I made in like my preparations here is that like, and I know this is kind of getting away from the as written part of this discussion, is that like the simile, the shadow, the construct of Mezro should be so powerful and gorgeous and beautiful that like even just the like crap novels they're finding in these like abandoned houses have information that would like make Candlekeep scream. Like Mezro should absolutely be a place that like it's a shadow of its glory and it's like beautiful.
So there's some interesting bits too, because if you read Ring of Winter, and then you encounter Mezro as it's presented in the Lost Runes of Mezro, there's going to be a lot of very obvious things that are wrong, which is, I think, the original city of Mezro. If they don't want to let you in, you can't find it. Doesn't matter how hard you try, right? Or there's very specific ways to get there, but it's protected.
So, no, this is a point of contention in Ring of Winter. The Bray, after, um, so the deep dive part now.
How
Yay.
am I wrong?
So
Please.
the way that Mezro works is I don't want to call it like a bit of a feudalism thing, but the reason they're at war with the Batiri, at war with the Ashawi, is they will go to like the wandering tribes. The Tabaxi demand payments, tithes, they're magic users, and the thing is that people don't like it when you do that. So they start attacking Mezro. So the Beret put up an invisible wall blocking ne'er-do-wells and
Yeah.
select others from entering Mezro. And this is notable. It is because of Artus Cimber's influence that the Beret agree to start letting people in. So it is not a permanent thing. One, it's not something Ubteo did. It's something that the Beret agreed to do that Artus Cimber breaks. So there are periods in history where Mezro is completely tied off. And this kind of feeds into the contention with Ras Nsi and the rest of the world, which is they kick him out, then they put up the wall. So it's Ras Nsi who is unchallenged, unchecked, and the guy running the fucking place. So yeah, sorry. I just wanted to throw on that it is like a conditional and after the events of Ring of Winter, the wall is no longer up. People are allowed to visit Mezro freely.
So I was wrong, and I'm happy I'm wrong. Because it does get into the politics, right, of the Bara versus what Ubteo cares about. And I think going back to it, if you read Ring of Winter, Ras Nsi, along with Artus, are the ones that save Mezro, and it's a wonder. The 5 best pages of Ring of Winter are the 3 pages and the 2 pages with Ras Nsi. He's an amazing character. Anyway, I'm talking about Ras Nsi again. Is there a theme here, guys? Ras Nsi is maybe a pretty good character that should get built up more.
Yeah, go for it. Like what? So we have the rise and fall of Ras Nsi and where he is now. How did he get to where he is in Toa in the adventure module, right? Because we're presented with a Ras Nsi that is like decaying,
broken,
right? He's broken. He doesn't have very much power. He's got people that are much weaker than him that are trying to like vie for his throne in his own cult. Like he's a shell of his former self.
Should we explain it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, maybe? Go for it.
So I think we've talked so much about how powerful
timeline of his life. That would be great because all the research I did, like the only reason why I studied the was because I was so confused about what the heck his deal was. So
the timeline of his life is basically a long time ago in a Chult far away. Mm-hmm. Ras Nsi passes the test to become a Bara of Ubteo. And the power he is given. So every Bara of Ubteo is given 2 things primarily. And please, again, guys, correct me what I'm missing here. You become immortal, and you get a power.
Yep.
And Ras Nsi's power was the ability to control all the dead of Chult. Fish?
So I wanted to, again, deep dive. So that means I get to be absurd about this. Ras Nsi is one of the original Barai. So again, this is a guy who is longer lived than Mezro. He is contemporary with the first ever Barai, the like only chosen of Ubteo, the woman I don't know her name, but it's like Oa who could like transform into any animal and like even a Tarrasque and all of this crazy stuff. And then we have Ras Nsi who can, yeah, the thing is not just control undead, make undead, and he can make undead of anything and have simultaneous perfect control like necromancers, liches. He has complete and total
Like
like
one
that's
would ask,
crazy.
how has anything bad ever happened in Chult? It's probably because Raz didn't care or didn't know, right? Like he could raise every dead creature in the entire subcontinent and send it where he wants at any point in time. He
And
doesn't, which is interesting.
yeah, and we know that from Ring of Winter, he uses undead as a workforce. Like this is
It's
he's
amazing.
just such an interesting character because like he cares so much about Mezro and like nothing else. Like he loves Ubteo, he loves Mezro, and like I love the practical application. Like it's just interesting how close Ras Nsi gets Chult to like a utopia. Nobody has to work, nobody has to labor. Sorry, go on. Sorry, I just don't.
Oh no.
I'm
So if we're talking timeline, Micah, right? So like he's there for thousands of years. All the other Bara come and go. Mezro gets created, turned into this sparkling metropolis of knowledge, kind of like you were talking about. And then he gets kicked out after he wipes out the show. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Shall we?
So he wipes them out, and the other Bara vote to kick him out. And so then he's out there. And the last time I think we have concrete information about Roz is at the end of Ring of Winter. So during the events of Ring of Winter, he's actually using four giant undead turtles to carry a palace around, surrounded by an army of undead that are harvesting what become in TOA the Nsi wastes. That's because he clear cut them, shipped it all to other places, and amassed a fortune. That his whole point was to amass the fortune so that he could help Mezro. Like when they let me back in, I'm going to have all this money. It's going to be great. We're going to be independent from anybody else. And so then something happens between then and now, and it's never really. I don't know of any explanation in the lore that there is of what happens between what you see of him in Ring of Winter and now.
Right.
It
That's
says
the black spot too.
so he was stripped of his status as a Bara. It says he lost all of his powers, and the power that he had was animate dead at will.
So
Which is
the
kind
thing
of less
is,
than what the books say prior to TOA. But yeah.
Okay.
And I would say
yes.
that little nugget I used in my campaign when they were talking to people on the economy in Port Nyanzaru. They're like, the zombies and stuff attack the city, and they're like, and all my players are like, oh, this is freaked out. This is crazy. They're up on the wall shooting these things. They're like, and actually, it's really good. You should have, only 5 years ago, it feels like there were twice as many that we were dealing with. And there's just fewer and fewer now, Back in the old days, we had lots and lots of zombies coming around or whatever, undead dinosaurs coming in. Yeah, it's still a thing, but we're pretty good at stopping them because he's lost his power. So there's nobody generating undead in the jungle anymore.
Just so I'm clear, we're confused on the time between Ring of Winter and Tomb of Annihilation. Like, is the point of confusion how he lost his powers?
I'm confused by it.
Yeah.
The well, the spell plague when I believe the book like outright states this in his like stat block thing. So Ubteo did not abandon him, or this wasn't Ubteo stripping him of his powers. His connection to Ubteo is cut off because Mezro, thus Ubteo, are in a different demiplane
Yeah.
because of the
Okay, I
spell plague. Because the spell plague would have annihilated Ubteo as a weird primordial deity thing. Because the spell plague is when we had gods walking the earth, so on and so
I
forth.
found it. I found the exact text. Just so uh, he betrayed his oaths and was banished from the city. Becoming a vengeful warlord, Ras Nsi attempted to conquer Mezro with an undead army, but was defeated. Rather than seek redemption, he sought revenge and was stripped of his god-given powers, his primordial-given powers. Come on, guys. The undead horde, no longer under his control, spread throughout the jungle of Chult. So that's what the book TOA tells us. I apparently ignored all of that when I ran the campaign.
Yeah, I totally thought that I might have to take a look at the Mezro supplements because I feel like I wonder if this is something where I like totally Berensteined myself. Um, but I
I
wonder if the
think
Mezro supplements contradict that and get into it more, but I just don't
I think
think
it's
Ubteo would
basically
turn on my boy.
they did Ras Nsi dirty when they wrote this book, and my recommendation is to actually ignore everything they've written about him in the book and come up with your own reason for why he's becoming a Yuan-ti and doing all the stuff he's doing. And I'd also say, I don't know, maybe don't give him the death curse. Maybe give him his powers back. Maybe have some fun with that, because that makes him much more interesting, especially because if he made a deal with Acererak, he did make a deal with Acererak to defend the Tomb of the Nine Gods that you end up in at the end of the game, right? Hey, at some point we got to talk about Ace, don't we?
sure.
We
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
gotten there yet. So he makes this deal. It's unclear to me exactly why he would do it. There's about a paragraph or a couple sentences about it.
Yeah, it's a little
So
thick.
this is where we get off into like la la land of my theories about stuff. But because Raz, in my version of this, was not stripped of his powers, is still trying to figure out how to bring Ubteo back, he kind of made this deal by accident when he was distracted with Ace, not understanding what he was committing to. But he's a man of his word. Like Raz Nsi said he would do this, so he's gonna do it. So he needs the players to go solve this problem for him. So instead of running the Fane of the Night Serpent as like a combat or a crawl, what if it's actually a political discussion where Ras Nsi comes in, and then I had him to show his power. I had him raise from the dead all of the notable enemies the players had killed throughout the campaign up to that point, and have them in the
Ooh,
Fane. So they literally walked in to see him
ooh.
passing Nanny Poo Poo. God, I hate saying Nanny Poo Poo. She needs a different name. But like they
I love
passed
that.
all these
That's
people
the
they
Pendleton
killed.
Ward in the adventure for you.
I love the Nanny Boo Boo.
Okay, sorry. So I'm done.
Okay.
Well,
Um,
I'll say this about the Fane. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Fish.
no, I just wanted to say, a lot of the like suggestions for Tomb of Annihilation is to encourage your players to play Choltons, to play natives, etc., so forth. I did a one upsies. My beloved player Mars, again, the who I like the love letter of TOA to, played a Yuan-ti from Ras Nsi's harem. So they got to the Thane and they already knew that like this character was a Yuan-ti, blah blah blah. And then going up to Ras Nsi like, mm, mm, hey, so this is and everyone's like, oh fuck, we have to talk to this guy.
Mhm.
Like the thing that I really do encourage making Ras Nsi a guy who does not fight, who wants to talk, because that will fill your players with more dread than like anything else you could do with the thing.
Yep, I agree with you totally. I mean, I'm pretty goofy. I'm more of the Nanny Poo Poo kind of guy. So for me, the Fane of the Night
Love the
Serpent.
character, just hate the name.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
that's all.
actually, it's the only part of the adventure that really terrorized my players was hearing the song "Nanny Nanny Poo Poo, Stick Your Head in Poo Poo" while they were like in a hag dream sequence scared the shit out of them. But that's not what I was about to talk about. But whenever I look at any large environment, like I look at Port Sorry or look wherever, I always use a metaphor from something else I know, some movie or a TV show or something like that. So for me, the Fate of the Night Serpent is Rocky Horror Picture Show. So it is a palace intrigue story. And just the way I keep all the characters straight is I'm like, okay, well, Ras Nsi is Rocky, or is Frankenfurter, and so on, and that all this intrigue works this way. And having a harem girl in the party that could show up would really, really be fun in that mix, because then they are already hitting the ground running in this like very. I mean, you've got a bunch of lisping snake people everywhere. It's pretty fun. But yeah, I think definitely you want to play it that way. I would not hack and slash through it. I would, treat it as a place where you can't hack it. You would just get killed if you tried to chop your way through this army of Yuan-ti. I think it would be a crazy idea. Ras Nsi, I like your idea. Ras Nsi is there because he's like super powerful, and he's teamed up with Yuan-ti, who would normally just kill somebody like him if they could. But they want him to be some sort of leader. Why? This is the people that were the most potent civilization of ancient history coming back for their second round. They're trying to take it over again. I think the book was written with the intention of having the Fate of the Night Serpent be, what's the group called? The Cult of the Snake people from Conan the Barbarian that, James Earl Jones is leading. I mean, that's kind of what I think the vibe that they're shooting for. And that can be that, but I think you want it to be like on the rise up, like you were saying. You want that to be like all the Yuan-ti there are like, yeah, we're about to win. Like this is the Acererak deal is a minor treaty or whatever. We are about to like conquer the universe. And the way we do that is apparently blow up this world through summoning the Fane, or summoning the Night Serpent, and having this big epic primordial battle. And then I don't know what their goal after that is, but I assume like ascend and fight in another dimension or something. I don't know what the Yuan-ti really want, but they have to have some plan other than just we're going to blow up the world and we're all going to die in it.
Yeah.
So, but I think
Remind me
to win.
If we have time, remind me at the end how I ended both of my campaigns.
Okay.
The single scene that I used to end both of them and bridge to the next one, because it kind of comes into some of that.
Okay. I will also mention that we are planning on having a whole deep dive on the Yuan-ti and the Fane. And there will be a lot of overlap of discussion between this one and that one, as well as the whole Omu deep dive.
Can I say one thing here? Yuan-ti are treated very differently in different books and different editions of D&D. So where you and your players are coming from may lead to wildly different assumptions about what Yuan-ti are. In some cases, they're literally pure evil. In other cases, they're like this beautiful matriarchal society.
And also, at one point, they were the slaves of the Serac, too. So they were like the under culture of that reptilian civilization, too. So that's there's a lot of ways they could probably be understood. So you're right.
All right. Where are we? We're good on time. Let me check here for topics. I'm having people message me. 1 second. We have... I think we've pretty much covered most of the big stuff. I feel like, is there anything that's really missing for DMs that they need to know about the people? Maybe we talk about Kirsabal, the Aarakocra. Do we have anything for that?
I got stuff.
Yeah. Or maybe about Firefinger and the whole all of the beacons. Why do the beacons exist?
Ace. That guy.
We can talk about Acererak. Yes, absolutely.
Acererak too. Yeah, but let's do Acererak first, because he's like,
and we also have the whole royalty of Omu.
there's that. That's a big part too. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Acererak is for a player, for a DM. I think that's probably the most critical thing to know next. So yeah, I think running through
That and the
Acererak,
hags.
way to go.
Plus, if you guys get me started on Kirsabal, then that's just the other deep dive that we need to do. We're just
Do we have a
don't
deep
even get
dive
me in
for all of
that.
that?
We need a whole deep dive just for Gears of War
I
For
for you.
Amu,
dive on it. I got
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah, no, maybe what we do is we have in our Omu deep dive, we go into Kirsabal and talk about the royalty and that whole plot thread. Yes, we could do that.
Sure. So who's got something about Acererak lore? I mean, I can give the idiot. Let me give the idiot summary, and then you guys can do your actual deep dives because I've got surface information.
Y'all can well actually each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Actually,
Acererak is a confusing part of the adventure to prep, I think, for most people that are new to the idea because in different generations, he's a different kind of monster. So that can be confusing, what is the difference between a demi-lich and an arch-lich and a lich and all this stuff. And getting that sorted out is tricky. Understanding what the Tomb of Horror is in relation to him, I think is important. And I prepped my party at the very beginning. I said, this is an homage to an adventure. And the reason why this adventure was invented was because way back in the day, people played a portable version of Dungeons and Dragons. They had a character sheet and they would go to different adventures on different nights run by different tables, by different DMs with different people. And that was great, but you always have those douchebags that show up and they've got all 18s all the way down and they've got 4 Vorpal swords, and they're like, no, my DM let me have this, and I swear I rolled these all raw. And you're like, okay, dude. So you got this like stacked character, and that's annoying enough when it's at your home table. But at conventions, when you go to Gen Con, people would show up and have this thing, and so all these DMs complained to Gary Gygax, and they're like, what the fuck are we supposed to do about these idiot kids that have these stacked characters? He's like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to write an adventure. You ever have one of those? Send them over to the Tomb of Horror table. And you go there, and when you walk in, first off, if you have any inkling, you should know, it turns out I'm the douchebag because I'm at the table of douchebags. And it's an adventure designed to kill your character mostly arbitrarily. You are just going to die and die and die. And back in the day, they would take your character sheet, rip it in half and say, go home. You're just basically done at this convention. You can't find another table. You're just going to have to go buy stuff. Go get a hot dog because D&D is done for you. And so you'd be sad and maybe learn to play better. And so it's an intentionally unfair game that's shitty to be in and whatever.
And that's why we get the disclaimer at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, and
very small text.
Yes.
Character sheet, right? So, and I've ripped up all my character sheets for all my players. I've killed a lot of my players. So I start off with that and why would somebody like Acererak have this? And it's because he's just a weird nut magic guy that makes fucked up dungeons to kill people in. That's his whole motivation. He's just a crazy asshole that does this stuff. And you're like, well, that's a weird way to survive as an interdimensional being, but he does it, and he's done it.
Supposedly so powerful that he could have become a god, but said, nah. Yeah. Why do that?
So I think from what I've picked up in the lore elsewhere, it's all the other archliches kind of look down on him like he's not serious. He's kind of absurd. We are all trying to do something super evil and interdimensional, and he's just being like, I'm going to collect up as many weird monsters and put them inside a dungeon from around the
He's the Joker.
He's very jokery. His voice is Skeletor when I run him. He's an idiot, crazy. Yeah. And he comes and fucks with them. The first night that they slept in the tomb, he just comes and shows up as a hologram and says, "You're idiots." I'm like, why are you sleeping? And you can do that. And that's probably all the lore you need. The lore isn't even lore. It's like Dungeons and Dragons lore as opposed to in-game lore that you need players. Where it's so this guy's crazy and going into his dungeon is not a good idea. But you're going to do it anyway because that's the adventure. Go ahead.
Are you cool if I go, Grim?
Go.
dry lore about Acererak, what you need to know. One, what you need to know is that you don't know. Nobody knows. We have guesses, we have ideas. Now, the strongest idea, the strongest grasp we have is that Acererak originates from Oerth, the Greyhawk setting, I believe,
Yep.
as the result of a rape by a Cambion to a human woman. So the horns on his helmet are not like the helmet like Loki style. He is half,
That's his skull.
that's his
That's him.
skull. And then we have, he becomes a lich. He's obviously mocked, derided, oppressed. His father like very much like corrupts him, guides him to like evil. That's fine. That happened thousands and thousands of years ago. Don't feel bad for him. This is a guy who, and this is my favorite bit of lore. This is how I love to explain Acererak. One, Vecna was his apprentice. Two, his motto, and this is, I believe, on his stat block on like in Tomb of Annihilation, which
I've
is
got it.
like,
I'll fact check you.
why be a god if you can make gods?
Basically, you almost nailed it.
The most important thing to keep in mind with Acererak as you are running this module is that one, if he can be as divorced and as separated from whatever is going on here, absolutely. He has a middle manager to protect the tomb, a middle manager to run the tomb, the hags to do the death curse and take care of the atropal. He does not care. He doesn't the atropal and the soul jar and all of that getting destroyed annoys him, but like he doesn't okay. The
He's got
experiment failed. Moving
10
on
other
to the
versions
next.
of this.
Yeah.
He's like
Right.
sprinkled throughout the multiverse.
So he's
Right,
got
exactly.
he's got the kobolds, right? The kobolds made a deal with him to reset all the traps in the shrines
Yep.
Yeah.
in Omu.
Right. Like
There's
this is go on.
one really tiny weird bit of lore that might be fun to play with is that depending on how you want to read the order of the various Tomb of Horrors modules, it's possible that this Acererak is a simulacrum of the real Acererak.
Ah,
Yeah.
Which means that
that's
this is a simulacrum lich of a lich, which is just like, what are we doing here? I do think though also like it's more fun to not understand him in some ways, but just make him present. And I think I love ideals, bonds, and flaws. I think it's like the best single thing that Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition ever put on stat blocks, and his are perfect. So read those because his what is it? His first one, you said the first one, Fish. His second one is I make this dungeon to harvest the souls of the strongest adventurers I find because they're my nourishment. And then the third one, which this is not the right deep dive, but how do you run a Acererak in the fight? His flaw is I underestimate my opponents, right? And so you can put all this together into like, so why does this tomb have like, why did Ace, from a lore perspective, create this tomb that has both the dumbest, simplest things to solve and some of the most hideously awful, like you're just being mean to your players things? And it's because he's just like throwing crap out here and like whatever.
Yeah, the big thing for running Acererak is just that. And I mean, the way that you are supposed to run TOA is that you are supposed to spend 98% of this campaign thinking Ras Nsi is the problem, and then Ras Nsi pulls a rug and he goes, "Yeah, no, that's Acererak. I'm just trying to manage my shit here." And like the thing is, Acererak should be detached. He doesn't care. The reason that you can know about the hags and know about Ras Nsi is they care. They care about succeeding. Uh, Acererak will not bother to remember the party. even if they kill him, he's just gonna be like, oh shit, I get to come back in 10 days. Like
Right.
my reliquary isn't even here.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Soul jar now. They don't call them
I'm going with
phylacteries anymore.
reliquary.
Oh yeah, because no, there's a reason. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, okay. Yeah, Acererak, I feel like Acererak, he just shows up for the fight and the party learns of his existence through Ras and through maybe also the
Wax.
Red Wizards, perhaps. Maybe
Oh,
Valindra
yeah.
has an idea of who Acererak might be. And with Zagmira and the Red Wizards in Omu, they may also have an inkling that Acererak has to do with things. Or they might have, tortured some kobolds and gotten some answers from them about who they've signed a deal with. Why are they fixing the traps and the shrines and stuff? So there are different ways for the party to find out that Acererak is responsible for the tomb's existence. Also, the fact that Acererak chose like the smartest smith in town and like killed him and then resurrected him as withers is hilarious to me. And it's like, you're gonna take care of the tomb now.
The story of Withers is,
Gora.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Gora. Yep.
yeah, just a crazy. It's one of those things that I mean, like, and this is a little tangential off, but man, Gora. Withers is a guy you can play 18, 20, 80, whatever different ways, and all of them are great.
We're gonna get into
Like,
the deep dive in the tomb, and
oh,
that's gonna be a really fun topic.
So hags. I want to make sure we touch
Oh
on
yes.
the hags. And
Oh, yeah.
I want to. Oh, go ahead, Apollo.
Yeah. So hags. We have the sea hags that are random encounters when you're on rivers. We have the night hags. Right? Are they all night hags in the tomb?
I believe.
yes.
So they're all night hags, which means they can go into the ethereal plane and can they leave whenever they want to the tomb, or
I
do they
think
have to
so.
stay in the tomb?
No. They can come out.
They can come
Yeah.
out.
They can
Okay.
go in. Yeah, they can. They're interdimensional for sure. They can come in, and they definitely should start. The way I would suggest running them early is as soon as they sense that any adventuring troop is like on the path to Omu, it's time to start coming and mixing.
Nightmares. Yep, doing the nightmare haunt.
Yeah.
Yes, fish.
And
Send
then
it.
there's
Sorry,
also
Oh, what?
I cut you off, Micah. I said something, it overlapped with you.
I was just gonna say there's also a green hag. So we
Hmm.
have the three major kinds of hags.
Oh yeah, we have Nanny. Yes.
Nanny Poo Poo. But some people don't like to say her name. But Nanny Poo Poo, I think, is a really fun character. And when you set, I would definitely, mine turned out to be a random encounter where they ran into the sea hags very early on the road up to Fort Belawarium. They were like second level and like hit sea hags and almost died. And then they were saved by the whatever the Order of the Yellow Banner or whatever. I just had those guys laying around as NPCs, and they're like, "Look at these little pussies! Ha 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 ha! We're gonna save them." And they're like, "Oh, who are these tough guys that like
The flaming fist.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think the sea hags should be your first introduction to the hags. And if they kill the sea hags, then that's going to send word through the world of hags that like people have killed hags over here. So then every one of the hags is then aware of them existing in Chult. So Nanny Poo Poo already knows they're coming. The hags, the night hags down in the basement know that they're coming. The Sohn sisters know that they're coming. It makes them immediately on the shit list of the hags. And so I would, maybe not at second level, maybe wait a little bit further in, but have them run into the sea hags. Just put that random encounter in pretty early, and then that gives a trigger for everything to start happening. And it's a good way, once those hags start getting into people's heads in their sleep, it's a good way to drop lore because they're learning lore in dreams, and you can get unreliable and stuff. So you can do it in nuggets.
Fish.
So the and this is yeah, a little bit away from the ha like a little more away from like the canon, the lore, the everything. This is me talking about what I did. Um I my campaign weirdly dealt with the topic of Ubteo and his deal with the gods. And the way that I had set up the deal with the gods is that they could not walk on Chult. No other force besides Ubteo could walk on Chult. And I had a cleric of Mistra, so I set up this whole thing where like Ubteo and Mistra had a star-crossed love affair where he carries her around Chult so her feet don't touch the
Can't
ground.
touch the
And
ground.
so the
Huh.
cleric could operate in Chult because they're together like that. Second thing is,
Okay.
I did that so hags couldn't walk on Chult. And so they land in Port Nyanzaru, and one of the first things they learned is that hags and like kind of the party kind of latched on to hags because they were worried. Hags don't have feet in Chult, which led
Hmm.
to a lot of really fucking crazy interactions where they're like, we're walking along and there's a decrepit old woman and they're like, we need to see your feet. Show me your feet. Take your shoes off. What are you wearing? Um,
I like that. That's cool.
so
Huh.
it's I kind of recommend this like physical tell for hags or other like dangerous creature. The Rakshasa have the backwards hands. And it's a great way to, your players have dinner with an NPC and the NPC is like, oh, hey, by the way, things are different here. Watch out for old ladies without feet. And they're like, what does that mean? We have to worry about hags here?
What
What
the
the
fuck?
I wasn't worried before, but now I am. The other thing is, and this is a part where I need someone to correct me. The hags have a clone, right? That they're
Yeah.
using to spy on the party, or did I invent that?
No, you didn't invent that. That's there.
That's the
Thank
Sun
God.
Sisters.
So
Yes,
they are
that.
hags. The Stone Sisters are the hags.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I think. Sorry, finish fish.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that is how I kind of tonally shifted the campaign is I had one of my party members cloned and then the party started getting too close. So the Stone sisters started torturing that party member through the clone, which made it personal, put them in a high gear because they don't know why the player character was suddenly like not sleeping, hallucinating. So the clone thing, I mean, you should absolutely just go fucking hard on there being a clone of the party or party members. Like, there's a lot of horror you can do there without outright saying, hey guys, hags are after you. Just by the way.
Would you mix that in with the mirror tomb or like the mirror?
I cut out the mirror
Hmm.
tomb.
Okay.
So did I.
But if someone else can do it better than
So
me, please.
I did two things. The first one, and I don't know if we'll get to this, but so I'm plugging somebody else here. Evantier Games has a whole series of supplements for Tomb of Annihilation that flesh out stuff that's happening in Chult. They have a thing. They have a bunch of wonderful little bits that expand locations or add a few locations, and it helps bring Ubteo in a bit more. But one of the things they did was they actually really deepened Mbala and the backstory of Nanny Poo Poo and ties her into the coven that is in the tomb, and she got kicked out because she didn't agree with Ace. So it gives her character some more depth and gives you some ways to start telling the players about the hags in the tomb. The second thing, and this has two subpoints, sorry, is that I think hags have nightmare haunting. You absolutely should use it. as soon as you think you can pull it off, they can do it through a tiny hut. If you have a party that has tiny hut, they can just walk through the ethereal plane to get in. And then I'm going to plug myself a little bit. I actually wrote a module. You can get it on DM's Guild. It's free. I'm not making any money off of this. It's also in Foundry if you use that. Sewing Up a Dream is the name of it. And it's just a very short, like 1 session or half a session dream sequence that forces your players to interact with all 3 of the hags during a communal nightmare haunting, so that you have like one set way to be like, there is some other weird malevolent force here. Piggybacking Fish, what you said, the horror of it, like there is weird stuff going on here. And then I think the last comment I would make is the hags and Ace want the players to get to the tomb. They want to draw people in and then kill them. That's their whole thing. So, okay.
Yeah. I wanted to add on. First off, you will take money for that, though, right? You've got the ability to take money.
No, I turned it off. It's 100% free. I'm saying it because I think it's a cool idea.
It's
not a pay what you want.
We can, if anybody wants to know why it's free, ask me and I will happily tell you exactly why it's free, but that's not the point of this deep dive.
So this is not overtly part of the hag story in it, but I feel like it was in there on purpose. I've got it written into my blog and stuff, but I feel like they wrote in a Wizard of Oz motif into one of the paths to Omu. And so Nanny Poo Poo is a green witch. So she would be the Wicked Witch of the West, who's nowadays a good guy now that we have Wicked, right? But so you've got her, we've got
Saja.
What's that?
You have the Naga, the Guardian Naga, right?
You got the Guardian Naga, so that's your Galinda, right?
Uh-huh.
You've got the giant robot that's frozen out in the woods, right?
What even? Wait. Okay, no, keep cooking. You're
Where's
cooking.
The
what?
Where's the lion?
And you've got this this is deep into the weeds lore about were-tigers, but you've got a were-tiger that can be the guide who is
Oh my God.
Fights the whole time.
She's looking for her mask, her heart.
Right?
What the hell?
It's wild, right? And so then
We're off to see the wizard. I mean, Ace.
Yeah.
Except this time there is a man behind the curtain and he's a dick.
Yeah.
So there's like a whole like Wizard of Oz thing. If you want to see it, it's there. And it's so much in it that when I read it, I'm like, how did they not mention it? It feels on purpose. I don't know if it's on purpose. I don't know Chris Perkins or anything or any of these guys.
Is there a Pink Floyd album we can play along with certain parts?
We
have the Batiri goblins,
you got the Batiri goblins that are the Batiri would be like, you would think they're the Munchkins, but they're not going to be the Munchkins, right? They've got to be the
gargoyles are the flying monkeys.
We have gargoyles, yeah.
Yeah,
we have flying snakes and we have the gargoyles.
Flying snakes, flying monkeys.
Yeah, you've got there's a lot of stuff that's like that. So I feel like they intentionally put that one in there. So there you go. But that's a hag thing there. So whatever.
Interesting.
You just reminded me of a random thing on my aspects of Teo thing. Flying. Sorry, I'll get it out because this is the lore deep dive. I also played all of the trickster gods as fragments of Ubteo.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I think it's a clever
aspect of Ubteo that he had used to control that empire or that nation. And then it was the further dispersion of himself, like just losing himself in all of these aspects all over the place.
All right. I want to wrap this up here. So the way that I want to wrap up these deep dives I know you have a point. Hold on. The Fish is going to just have all of these things to say all the time. It's great. I love it.
So polite though.
Yes. The way that I want to wrap up the deep dives is anything that was mentioned regarding articles, blogs, Reddit posts, or, things that you got inspiration from or things that you wrote. I want to get those links into the deep dives forum on Discord. Because these are the things that people are going to be able to read, make their own decisions and, inspirations off of, things that people have linked in the chat. I want to go grab those and put them in there. I will be doing that, post meeting. But I want to, as part of this, curate these resources and get them into the deep dive discussion channels on the forums, on the Discord, so that we have a record of these are the things we're talking about. These are the things that we've written. We don't have hours and hours and hours and hours to talk about them. But yeah, that's the purpose of these things. We have the podcast form, and we have the go read these other materials that we're referencing today. I mean, I can.
So-
You have something, Fish, really quick?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I have an addendum, a correction that my friend Victor caught. I said that Acererak was Vecna's master. He was not. It was flipped. Acererak was Vecna's apprentice.
Okay.
That is a very important
Yes,
addendum.
other way. Okay.
I will not stand being well actually'd on the YouTube video. So
Right.
thank you, Victor. Saved my ass.
But which one is still alive?
I mean, neither of them. They're both undead.
Yeah.
Fair. Isn't Vecna canonically dead at this point, or am I wrong there?
I don't. Is he?
Hasn't he been killed like 6 times?
I mean, he's still got an eye and a hand somewhere. I mean, that seems like a lot of lips left over. I don't know.
All right. So thank you all. I'm going to wrap up here in a moment here. Are we okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you all so much for being guests on the first Toa deep dive. We're going to have several more. I've got people messaging me already to add themselves to more deep dives. For those of you on Twitch, thank you for being there and for adding follows in. Stay followed, add a follow if you want to be notified when we go live with more of these deep dives. I'm not trying to get to partner or anything. I'm not like doing full Twitch streaming anything full time or anything like that. But this is the channel that I have access to stream stuff off of. So that is there. Join the Discord if you're not already in the Discord for Tomb of Annihilation. I'm saying this for people who are going to be watching this on YouTube. The subreddit r/Tomb of Annihilation has the link to the Discord in the sidebar. Join the discussion. Right. And yeah, thank you all for being here. And I'm going to close my recording and sign off here.
All right.
Bye.
Great to talk to you, all you guys. And I look forward to checking out your YouTube channels and stuff because I'm new to the community.
All right.
Thank you.